All right. Want to share some? Okay, so I guess we wanted to start off just by talking about ourselves and background, because one of the questions we get really often is, why should we listen to you? And so I guess we should just get this objection out of the way early. My background, I was a federal investigator for 7 years. I have been in the Air Force now for 16 years. And my primary investigations were sexual assaults, fraud, and export enforcement. So I spent some time overseas looking at our dual use technology that was going to other countries. And so that's my background. I went to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and I oversaw all of our cases and operations in the Pacific for like 14 different units, and each unit had some 5 to 15 agents. It just widely depended on the size of the unit. And then we had a whole bunch of case files that we would look at. And so definitely got my reps in doing my own field work as an investigator, and then also as an investigative supervisor, touching 5 times more cases than I would have ever touched just in the field. And Wes, please share your background.
Yeah, thank you. That was so short and sweet. That's like hard for me as like the guy who doesn't stop talking ever, but I'll try to keep it short here. So background from the public safety side, I was in law enforcement for 16 years. I was a training officer on the street for a decade, and then I was a detective. I was a senior detective in my unit where we investigated everything under the sun, but then my primary role was actually the coroner detective, so I was a death investigator. Then I was also a bomb technician. I was on the FBI's stabilization team. And I got hurt in 2018, went through a bunch of surgeries, ended up retiring in 2021, and then jumped full-time back into real estate and business investing because that was my background. Been an investor. I bought my first house when I was 19, so 22 years ago, and house hacked it and did that on repeat, and started private money lending about a decade ago, actually almost 11 years ago now. And I've been private money lending for a long time. And then when I joined, it's up to, almost a year and a half ago now. I've done, I'm next week, I'll probably hit my 100 deal in the 18 months, 100th deal that I've been a part of through lending or buying. So I've been super active. And what I've been trying to really do is focus on becoming even more knowledgeable as a PML, because I've made a lot of mistakes in the past. A lot of my friends have made mistakes, and we all are learning together. And I just really have a true passion for people not losing their money. So I really just want to help you not lose your money. And that's the whole reason we do this. That's why I'm doing these. I've been doing one-on-ones for the last like 8 months with people. And I've talked to, probably 100 plus people now who want to be PMLs, but don't feel confident enough in marketing themselves as a PML because they just don't understand everything, which is fine because we're all starting somewhere. But I'm so glad they ask before they go out and lend on something that they don't know what they're doing. And then they get in a precarious situation where they're coming to us for help later. You don't want to be in the later scenario. You want to be in the, let's get it figured out. Let's have preventative measures in place. Let's do our due diligence so we don't get in a situation where, you're really going to be struggling to get your money back straight up. Right, Mel?
Yeah. So basically, the painkiller is so much more painful and expensive, and it doesn't even address the underlying issue. So it's like, take your vitamins, be proactive, and just be as diligent as you can ahead of time, because trying to fix things after you have all these underlying ailments and problems and the money's gone is just painful. And I guess, like Wes, I bought my first house when I was 19 too. I didn't know we had that in common.
Whoa!
I used my VA loan. So, I had access to 0 down option before I knew anything about creative finance. And I've learned some lessons along the way. I got in a pretty nasty, I had a developer. In 2016, I bought a property in Hawaii, new build. And that was my first taste of being in the judicial system as as somebody, a complainant rather than the investigator doing all of the work on the government dime, when it doesn't cost that much because I'm actually getting paid to do the work. And so what you don't understand when you're part of the system is how expensive it is to be a participant in the system, and those attorney's fees and those years of litigation and those just nonstop disruptions to court appointments and hearings and showing up or not showing up, and it's exhausting and it's expensive. And that's something that I think a lot of people, that when they go, oh, just take them to court, it's like, oh, you're cute, you haven't gone to court, have you? It's rough.
It's rough.
Yeah.
It's rough. And you just saying that, actually, so funny, real quick story. I met my wife in court. When I was a deputy sheriff, they require you to work a year in the courts when you're newer. So I did 2 years on the street as a patrolman, and then I had to go into courts. And she was a civil litigator. She's an attorney. And she was there for an eviction process. And she did a bunch of different civil stuff. So that's part of like my credibility package as far as feeling like I can teach you stuff. Is I have a wife who is a contracts attorney, former civil litigator who dealt with real estate. And she has been a tremendous amount of information for me that I've been able to then in turn share with people as far as, legal processes and, contracts and operating agreements and things that you need to do up front to really kind of protect yourself. She's been amazing. So that's shout out to my wife there. Sorry, Mel, go ahead.
No, that's perfect. And I think what you're saying right there is, I don't know if and when and how we want to present these, but that feels like a golden rule, is have a team. And that team of professionals, I mean, you're lucky that you're married to one, but also people should have that team of professionals no matter how you want to structure your team. So I think an attorney, even if it's not your attorney that you have on retainer, an attorney you have that you can do a consult with and pay for that hour is really important with some of these more developed marriages, if you're actually getting into partnerships with people. So the team. Yes. You mentioned something earlier too that I think plays into the team, Wes, is having a second set of eyes. So it doesn't have to necessarily be an attorney, it can be an underwriter or Wes.
Or a fellow PML. Yeah. We get a lot of people that approach us who are starting in the beginning phase, and, it's where do I start? Like, how do I learn how to lend? Like, I have money to lend. And the first thing usually when they come to me is they've already had a deal come across their table. Somehow it got out that, hey, I have money to lend. People approach them and they oftentimes don't know what they're looking at. And so I tell them all the time, like, get a second set of eyes just to start right away, because you don't know what you don't know. And so I will have people approach me all the time and say, hey, I have a deal I'm considering lending on. Will you take a look at this for me? I'm happy to take a look at stuff. Totally fine. I'm going to do, like a baseline level of opinion for you, which kind of gets into the second rule for me, since we're to come from the creative finance world. A lot of people right now, they go after, and Mel, hopefully don't mind if I kind of change topic here, but talking about no equity deals, right? So as a lender, a no equity deal is like the most disgusting thing could ever cross my table. Because what does no equity actually mean for you as a lender? Your equity in a house is your security, right? There's no equity in a house. You are essentially lending unsecured. Now, of course, you can mitigate this risk with if they have another property, they can cross collateralize, right? Some other property they own that actually has equity. You could put the deed of trust. Let's back up a little bit. Does everybody know the two instruments that you need at a very minimum before you lend? You need a promissory note, which is your contract, and your contract needs to refer to what you're secured by, which is a deed of trust, a mortgage, a note, whatever it is. Different states call it different things. We just call it promissory note backed by deed of trust. I personally don't draw these up myself every single time. I ask title or the TC on the deal to draft those documents and then send them to me for review. I will then look at them and make sure none of the actual language in there is funky or wrong, misspellings. These are things, what you're doing ahead of time with your contract is protecting yourself for later if, and sometimes when there's going to be an issue, because that's what you're going to have to refer back to see what your actual legal recourse is, right? So I have those other people draft them up, send them to me. When you're newer, I think we have templates and different mentorships that people might be in who are in here, since I know we're not all it's up to. Um, and I just see Ralph threw it in the side there. Personal guarantee. That's if someone's willing to sign a personal guarantee, that's fine. But what does it matter if I have no money to my name and I sign a personal guarantee? It means I'm judgment proof, right? If you don't know what judgment proof means, it means that when a judge hands down in a lawsuit, you lost, here's what you owe. You may not have any assets to your name. You may not have any money to your name, right? You may file for bankruptcy. You could be judgment proof. So personal guarantee does not, it's another level of protection on paper, but unless that person actually has the assets to back that up, personal guarantee is totally worthless. You should always be lending based on what the deal and the asset is and not relying on personal guarantees, right? Someone could come in and say, I'll PG this because I have no equity. That's a red flag to me because first of all, you're lending on a deal with no equity. Second of all, offering up a PG so willingly is usually a sign of they know something could go wrong. That's the way I think of it. So what's a way that you could lend on some of these no equity deals, shift from being a lender to being an actual capital partner? Now, what does that look like, right? It looks like you having control. Having control is the number one most important thing you can have in a deal anyways. Now, if you're going to be a passive lender and get 10 or 12, 15% on your money and be completely hands off, that's great if it's a safe deal to lend on. However, if it's a deal where you're not really secured by that equity, you can become a partner with what I do. And I've done a bunch of these before, and I've done them on Morby methods. I've done them on actual Lens capital partners, is I retain 51% control. I don't have 51% of the return. We're breaking it down so I'm still getting a return as if I was a PML. So the deal still works for the person who's finding it and who's going to be operating it on day to day, finding the property management, having the books taken care of, etc. But what happens is that we come in. I typically do it as a joint ventureship because I don't create an entity with someone until I'm really. I think our homeboy Pace says date before you marry, right? I don't create an entity with just anybody. That gets into tax implications, right? And so the JV agreement can spell out very clearly who's responsible for what with a bunch of contract terminology, like if this happens, then this happens, right? And these are all things that you need help writing up with. There are templates for this, but you need to get into nitty gritty details of like, what do you want them to be responsible for? And then the other thing that people don't know all the time is that you can hold title or on the deed, multiple entities or names. I have a piece of land that I own with 7 other entities. So it's Wes Grant LLC, 12%, blah, 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 LLC, 12%. And it goes on and goes on and on. And we have the equity, the actual ownership broken down that way. Now, in your JV agreement, which is your legal document, you can present that if, say, let's use an example. Say Mel were to need money and I came in to lend to her. It's a no equity deal. It's a wrap deal, right? It's all the rage. It goes wrong. It goes wrong and Mel gets abducted by aliens, right? Worst case scenario. Or she just stops performing. I have this document that says I have control. I'm allowed to step in and I'm allowed to sell the house. I'm allowed to place my own property manager, my own tenants. I'm allowed to renovate it. I'm allowed to do whatever the heck I want because I have control. That control kicked in the moment that she stopped following her part of the contract. So that control, if it's a deal that you would want to own on your own, that control protects you from having to go through the actual legal recourse. Because when you get into the legal recourse phase of things, that's when like we already talked about, it gets really messy, time consuming, expensive, and you're probably not even going to get your money back in the end.
Right.
I worked in our civil division for a little while where I had to go serve wage garnishments and levies on people's properties. And it was kind of eye-opening to where people would get judgments against them and they were never going to be able to pay these things back. And the judge is taking 5% of their part-time paycheck to pay you back. So you're going to maybe get your money back in 30 years. I mean, with no interest. So I'm just trying to like not be all doom and gloom, but for this specific thing, for no equity, think about having a position of control on the contract where you're a part owner and not just a lender. And sorry, there's a question on the side. What is control called? My phone switched to the car. Can you leave my moment? So John, Control meaning you actually get to buy it with them, and you have a joint ventureship agreement that spells out a contract that says what they're responsible for and what you're responsible for, and you actually go on title or on the deed with them. So you are half owner, but on your contract of, in an entity, it'd be called an operating agreement. They're not called operating agreements in JVs, but in your JV contract, it would spell that you have 51% of voting rights. Your voting rights in your entity or in your joint ventureship is what matters. And you could take that document to go show an attorney or show a judge if you had to, like, hey, I have the legal right to do this. Hopefully you won't have to get to the point where you're talking to a judge through a JV agreement, but you could go to a property manager and be like, hey, I'm the co-owner, I want to do this. And they say, well, you need to show me proof that you're the co-owner. Like, great, here's our document that is signed, notarized, and here is the states that they haven't done this, and I am 51% voting right, and I am voting that I'm taking over control, and I can do whatever I want with the property. Now, that's only if you want to actually end up maybe owning and operating that property. If you want to be a straight passive PML and never have to worry about it, then a no equity deal, unless they can cross collateralize, is probably not something you should lend on.
Right.
Right.
And I think like what you're saying too, so John, really, like, to summarize that, partner versus lender, that's what the control factor that Wes is getting at is. And second, when you're talking about these agreements, taking that blank JV agreement and putting two parties on there and then putting an address on there is insufficient. So you need to understand that these things exist as a template, but that doesn't mean anything is actually spelled out unless you actually spell it out. And then the question, people want these black and white answers. Well, how do I do that? It depends. What's your agreement? What do you want? What are you capable of doing? Because if you're going to have an agreement that says you're going to take over a co-living property and you have no experience or interest in managing a co-living property, you probably don't want the JV agreement to say that. You want to have it say that you guys will appoint somebody, and because you have 51% ownership, you get to choose who you're appointing. So you're going to now vet property managers, and the company is going to pay for it. So the proceeds are going to come out, and you are still going to get your distributions based on your proportional partnership ownership or whatever. But it depends. So people always want to know, like, oh, well, what should it say? What's your agreement? What are your strengths? What are you interested in doing if worst case scenario happens? So you have to play these long, drawn out, hypothetical scenarios out so that you can put it in the agreement and make it make sense.
Yes. And I saw that Tigger asked a question about, what if the wrap partner fails, you get the properties, and now you have to sell or take over properties? Well, you wouldn't be foreclosing because you wouldn't have a lien position with a promissory note deed of trust anymore. You'd actually have ownership. So you could do whatever you want with it. So you need to make sure that you have an exit strategy, right? Because typically what happens with wrap properties, no equity deals, is your down payment that not down payment, your entry fee that you're bringing for a wrap deal is typically paying a realtor, paying the seller some money to go away, paying a wholesaler, paying some arrears. You're typically not paying down any equity with that entry fee. So you are probably buying it at a no equity, and we're going to remain a no equity deal. And so you got to be prepared to have an exit strategy separate from, if you can't sell it as a wrap, what else can you do with it, right? And this is just why I don't like these deals. That's me personally.
Yeah, and I think back to the wraps. I think sometimes these wraps are literally just bad deals. There's something that somebody locked up and they committed to because they're excited about their first deal, and they go, hey, what can I do with this? There's way too high of an entry fee. I can't get investors. It can't cash flow. So what do I do? Wrap. And they think it's the easy button they can just hit. But what you need to understand is that in order to sell a wrap, you need to have a whole bunch of agents in your pocket. And those agents have to have a whole bunch of buyers that are penalty box buyers. You might need access to certain communities of, entrepreneurs or construction workers, or like an example of a lot of really successful wrap sellers are people who have access to the Latino community. And so if your partner that you are lending to or partnering with, in which their exit strategy is a wrap, you need to know, can they actually sell on a wrap? Do they have these resources and contacts? And what's their performance on it? Is this an easy button because this is their first deal that they locked up and it's way too high of an entry fee? Or is it a legitimate exit strategy that they're capable of performing on? And these are the questions you have to ask.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. Is what's their history, right? Like, I made these mistakes for y'all. That's why I'm talking about them, because I like to dive into things just like head first. And I bought / lended on 4 wraps all in the same month because I was like, I've never done a wrap. Let's just do it and figure it out. So I'm just like, here's a bunch of money. And now it's been a process of learning. And but I mean, it's great because I wouldn't know how to avoid this issue again. And I haven't lost money, to be clear. Nothing's gone wrong. Wraps are just sometimes hard to sell. And certain people have better luck with them, right? So if someone has a huge wrap buyer list and they are churning them out left and right, then hey, you may feel comfortable enough to go and work with them. Awesome. If someone has never sold a wrap before, myself, I would probably consider trying to partner on it if I think I could find a wrap buyer on it, or look elsewhere. And I'm not telling you to not lend or partner on wraps at all, because people have great success with them. You just need to dig a little bit deeper as far as with anything. If anybody's ever borrowing money, what is your history? What's your experience? How many of these have you done? This exit strategy you're trying to do, what is your contingency plan, right? What's going to happen if you can't do this? A lot of times people that I talk to don't have a contingency plan. It's like, okay, let's start thinking of what else we could do. Let's get creative with what would we do with this, right? Because if you're going to be partnering with them or working with them, like, you guys need to come up with an answer together, right? Having gone through this a few times with the wrap deals, there's really not a lot of other options. But then again, there's a lot of people who are, like I said, are having success with them, and not trying to scare people away from it. I just want people who are considering to be a lender to be very aware of what your real risk on this is, right?
Yeah, there are 3 deals that I see go wrong a lot. When I was a TC, I saw them go wrong. Since I've been doing this due diligence and people have reached out for consulting on this, the deals that I see go wrong are wraps, no equity sub 2s where they took on a PML, and fix and flips.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these are with inexperienced people. And Wes and I talked last time when we did this on September 11th. I think the point is not that you don't partner with inexperienced people. The point is not that you can't give people a chance. The point is that you need to build in security for yourself, especially when you're the one with money to lose. People are taking action and making mistakes, and they might not take it as seriously when it's not their money. And that's just the truth. So at the end of the day, if you are partnering with inexperienced people and you want to be a passive lender, you need to require them to have another party involved, and they need to give up some of that equity to somebody who's got some experience. And so they're learning the right way to do it. They're getting their reps in. You're not denying them because of their inexperience, but you are creating an extra requirement for them to have some experience on their team.
Yes. And perfectly said. And I want to go real quick because John said the next thing that's on my list. So I'm going to just bring it up right now. John said, in order to be a good PML or PMP, you have to be good at underwriting. John, you nailed it. That's exactly it. I tell people all the time, the number one thing you need to get competent in is your underwriting for all of these exit strategies, right? I personally don't lend on short-term rentals. I have a bunch on my own that I've bought, so I have a decent amount of underwriting experience at them, but I just don't lend on them. And so I don't stay on it. I don't underwrite short-term rentals a lot. But because I also buy a lot of stuff, I underwrite single family homes all the time. I underwrite multifamily all the time, and I underwrite businesses every day. That's what I do mainly. And so I have gotten, from years of experience of underwriting and buying, really good at underwriting rentals and flips. Comping, if you can get good at underwriting and comping, you're going to feel way more confident in your person's numbers that they're bringing to you. Because a lot of times what happens is people bring a deal to you that they want to lend on. You want you to lend on. And they're trusting a wholesaler's numbers. And like, some of my best friends are wholesalers. I'm not talking bad on wholesalers, but straight up, a majority of the time, wholesalers' numbers are whacked. They're not right. They're not accurate.
Assets most of the time.
Yes. So you need to make sure that it is actually the deal that they say it is, right? And so thank you, John, for bringing that up, because getting really good at underwriting is so important. That is, I mean, that's what I do. If someone comes to me for lending, what am I doing? The first thing I'm doing is underwriting the deal, just to see if the deal makes sense, because then I'm going to underwrite the person, which is a whole nother topic, right? And that's something that Melissa can help you with. But underwriting the deal is the first thing, because it's going to be quick and it's going to be easy, and I can see right away what my risk is and if this deal is actually a deal. And that just comes from experience of just doing it. I just jump on. I used to jump on when I was just a bigger pockets guy, before I was in sub two, before I really kind of knew what I was doing. I would just jump on to Redfin every day, find a house, and I would go underwrite it. Look at the numbers if I were to buy it. What's my new debt going to be? What's my estimated tax going to be when it changes title because the tax gets reassessed, right? What's my rental comps going to be? Quick and dirty. I'd get so good at it that it's so easy to do now. And then we have a ton of other people. If you're in sub two, you have access to a guy named Bo who does underwriting all the time. You can email him a deal and he'll do it for you. So if you're a lender and you get a deal that comes to you and you have no idea what you're doing yet, and you're not confident, Bo's a great second set of eyes. He may not tell you yes or no to lend on it, but he's going to give you some underwriting information, right? There's also a ton of free resources on underwriting. Like, oh my gosh, YouTube University is really unreal. Now, a lot of times people talk about how YouTube is not good for education, but that's bogus. I'll tell you what, that's bogus.
You're wrong.
When I was a bomb tech, I had a time where I was working on an IED. I had to go onto YouTube to figure out a portion of this switch to make sure I didn't blow myself up. YouTube University is still really a thing, right? And so, how about Jamil? Jamil's comping class on YouTube.
His rules and his exceptions to the rules, they're chef's kiss, my guys.
That's YouTube University right there. So if someone wants you to lend on a fix and flip, go get good at comping by going and watching Jamil's comping video series and go practice it. Like, it takes some time and some effort. And of course, if you're going to be risking putting your money out there as a lender, you got to put some time and effort into getting good at stuff, right?
I would also say, you want to be the bank. What does the bank have? An underwriting team. They have an entire team. And so back to that initial thing that Wes and I were saying, like, you need to have a team. You need to have a second set of eyes. You need to start building skills, but skills take time. And they take reps, and it takes years of getting really good at sniffing out some of this shit. And also, like Wes said, hey, he didn't know anything about reps. He was like, let's get into reps. And boom, you're always learning. You are always learning. And so having a second set of eyes and having other people involved is really important. So if you want to be the bank, banks aren't single people. They're institutions. And I'm not saying you have to go get so big you need to be regulated and licensed, but consider acting like the bank if you want to be the bank.
Yeah. Hey, can someone help Marcia on the side and share Jamil's YouTube channel if you can find it for us real quick? And let's see. Underwriting takes practice. Yep. After going through the course, do it to make sure you really understand. Yep. You got to do it. It's just reps. Like with anything, it's a lot of reps, right? Okay, I'm gonna jump one more topic here.
Go.
And I want to talk about something, because this is something that comes up a lot. I have a highlight of all the things I typically get asked about often. Lien position. Talk about lien positions, okay? So lien positions, I will hear people argue this often. But there's facts around lien positions, okay? And typically what happens with the creative world, you're not typically coming in first position unless, of course, it's not a creative deal, or it's a full seller finance deal and you somehow got the seller note to subordinate to your private money line, which typically doesn't happen. So if we're coming in and we're buying a house or lending on a sub two deal that has a institutional lender in first position, you're coming in second position. What do lien positions actually mean, right? So there's common law in the United States that says first in time, first in right. Essentially what that means is whoever had a stake, a claim of a property first gets paid first. There are some liens that can supersede this. Not all, but some tax liens do. There are certain other judgments that can supersede your mortgage note. I don't have an example of that actually ever happening to anybody, but that's what I have learned, right? And so typically, if you're in second position, the big goal is to make sure, just like with the no equity thing, is to make sure there's enough equity to secure you, right? Because that first position lender is going to get their money paid to them first. And then whatever's left meat on the bone is going to come to you. And so I saw someone post a little while back on some social media platform about how, first, second, third, fourth, fifth position, it doesn't matter what you're in. Why do you care? And it was like, aha, okay.
That's someone who's not putting their own skin in the game.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, that actually does matter quite a bit, right? The other thing that matters is that if you are in, say, third position, why are you in third position? I'd want to investigate that further. Why are there already 2 liens on this property? What else are they needing money for? It could be a fix and flip deal where there's a hard money lender in first position. There could be a contractor who started work who didn't get paid. So boom, he filed a mechanics lien. He's in second position. Now you're coming in as a PML. This is a real life example, by the way. You're coming in as a PML and they are telling you like, oh, you're going to be in second position. You go on to the county recorder's office and you pull up the property and you see that there is another deed in front of you. It's like, that's interesting. So that's just some basic baseline due diligence that you need to be doing, because then this same property had a third, a fourth, and a fifth lien on it. And this person was claiming that they were going to be in third, right? Then come to find out they also had a few lenders on it that were never even secured on the house. So it was, this was a severe case of fraud and a real unfortunate situation for some people. But you need to consider what lien position you're going to be in, and you need to verify that. Right now, hopefully, jumping to the next part of this golden rule is you never, ever lend money directly to someone. Ever.
That's right.
Ever. I'm going to say never, ever. Like my dad lent money straight to me, and I told him that, hey, I tell you, like, I know I'm your son and like you're lending straight to me, but like we shouldn't be doing it this way. This is the way we should do it. This is the way we teach it. This is the way I always do it. Of course, he still was like, I know where you live. I don't care. Okay, cool, Dad. But you should never, ever send to someone. You hear the craziest stories about how, well, it has to come to me because of this. It has to come to me because, okay, when I hear because of this, all I hear is you did something wrong and you screwed up, and now you are trying to grasp at straws to get money, and you are risking the person who actually has the money because you didn't do something right. So your deal's going to fail because no one should be lending money straight to you. You're always going through title, a closing attorney. Different states have attorney states. Different states have a title or an escrow officer, right?
Right. And escrow is just facilitating the transfer of funds for an agreement.
Yes.
I had some guy try to claim he was trying to take $250,000 from some lenders for a loan product that was undisclosed, rare minerals, name your 20 things hidden behind non-disclosure agreements, can't tell you, but I'm going to take your $250,000, but it's also going to go directly to my attorney. We don't need escrow because this isn't real estate. No, that's not how it works. You can use escrow for so many, like it's for the transfer of funds in accordance with an agreement, the end. So do not let these people convince you that you're the crazy person. It's your money. Don't fall into these traps.
Yes. And that's typically where a lot of the deals end up going wrong, is people, trying to shame you into like, oh, well, you're dumb. You don't know what you're talking about type thing. Or I hear it all the time. Like, oh, well, they said that none of their other lenders ever needed a promissory note. That's the famous line, right?
That's the famous one. Highlight that. Foot stomp it. Say it 5 more times. None of my other lenders do that.
None of my other lenders needed a deed of trust. Oh,
oh,
well, how?
Right.
Well, how are you securing them? Oh, well, we have a promissory note. Okay. What's your promissory note say? So it says that I'm borrowing this much money and I owe them this much money. I'm like, okay, what is their collateral? Piece of paper, a contract. You are going to court. Like you are going to not get your money back. Guaranteed. So, because that lender didn't use me as a TC. So yeah. Sorry, I lost track of Wes, Mel.
Yeah, one, they could be lying, right? 2, they're trying to shame you into their sloppy practices And whether or not it's true that their other lenders didn't require that of them, do not. Don't fall for it, because those are the famous, I have these books that I shared a pretty long set of stories about just getting caught up with some guys that are ripping off 7 other people, and what they would treat my requests for adjustments to notes, to agreements, to as if I was like this wildly anal person. But I mean, they didn't even have like default terms in their promissory note. Their promissory note was secured by a deed of trust prior to knowing what that is. Let me foot stomp. Wes said this before. I've said this many times. Those are 2 separate documents. Promissory note, deed of trust. Promissory note, UCC1 filing. Promissory note, lien. Why? Because that loan amount, say it's $80,000. With a lien only, without that promissory note telling you what the terms of the agreement are, that means you get $80,000 back. Not your interest, not your late fees, not your recourse, the payment of the attorney's fees, and all of these other things. You need to have your terms to couple. It's your peanut butter and jelly. Like, put them together. They belong together. They're delicious, and they're not separate.
It's funny as you go through. There's a lot of terms in the real estate world that just are repetitive and mean the same thing and are like confusing. And so, like, what I do, and what I do this with everything I do, whenever I hear a term, or if I'm reading a book and someone says a word and I'm like, I have no idea what that means, I go to my little notebook and I write it down. I write that word down, and then I go right away and I Google, what the heck does this word mean? And then it helps connect all those dots, right? I talk to a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I've heard that term, but I don't know what it means. I'm like, you heard the term and you didn't know what it meant and you didn't look it up. Like, if it has to do with you lending money, like, please go understand every single thing, right? Because things are interchanged names within different states. Different title companies call different things, different lenders, different borrowers. People call the same thing by different names. And so don't get confused in the terms and what you actually need and what's out there, which jumps me to checking off my little. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even the term deal, even a deal is different to everybody. My deal is different than Wes's deal. My deal is different than Gary's deal. Like, you need to be very clear with what a deal is to you so that you understand what you're willing to lend on. And I think it's really, really important to understand also your own goals. If your goal is to do co-living, why don't you go ahead and lend on co-living so that you're building relationships here and so that you're seeing what a deal looks like? Or unfortunately, if there's a bad experience, you're seeing what a bad deal looks like too, because you are going to have learning curves when you're getting started, and you need to have larger buffers for that learning curve, because things go wrong. And so if you're doing it with the right people, even the wrong people can teach you some things. Unfortunately, it's a little more painful to learn the wrong way, but you'll still learn. So understanding what a deal is to you, or to Wes or whoever you're lending to, so that you can understand the differentiation between terms and how some people treat terms, whether it's underwriting or deals, or like you were saying, like, if you don't know what that term, that promissory note, that deed of trust, that UCC1, that lien, that mechanics lien, there's a whole bunch of, there's a smorgasbord of options. So anyway, like, you were going to hop.
I was going to hop, but I forgot what I was going to hop to, but that's okay. Because I think I finished up like the lien talk. Just understand where you are in lien position. Make sure that you're actually checking, or title's checking. Title's job. This is why you go through title. Oh, it was another example. It was another story. Someone had already closed on a house, and now that they closed on the house, they needed some extra funding for something, right? And they wanted the money to come straight to them. Okay, so the lender came to me and said, hey, well, they already own the house, so like, I don't know, and they own it, their name's on title, so I don't see what the risk is in just letting straight to them. Okay, well, the big risk is that you don't know what else is attached to that property, because you can still buy a house with liens that stay on, right? Liens stay on. You don't have to always pay liens off, especially if it's a sub-2 deal. And so title needs to go do the title search. That's why you have to have title, or in whatever state, whoever you're using. If TC is doing it, if an attorney is doing it, well, whoever's doing it, there needs to be a title search done to make sure there's no other outstanding liens that are going to affect the sale of this property, which then in turn affect your equity security, right? I think that was the last thing I was going to touch on that. Let's see. Can you explain can't win in case when we go to court, only promissory note?
He's not saying that.
No,
but
I'm not saying you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with a promissory note that's not actually backed by a security instrument that ties you to the property, you're just lending to a person. You're not lending on the deal, on the property, right? So if you want to do personal loans to people through a promissory note and a personal guarantee, and then they don't pay you, your recourse is court. There's no asset you can foreclose on. There's no control if you come in as a partner, right? So if you just have a promissory note with no mention of what it's actually secured to and no actual legal documented of it being secured to that, then your recourse is a lawsuit. And I'm not saying you can't win. It's just going to court and going through a lawsuit, you're probably going to spend more money and time and more stress than the money you actually lent, potentially. Right. Obviously, not on the huge deals, but that I've heard some. Luckily, myself have not had to go through any court proceedings for any lends that have gone wrong. I've had lends gone wrong, but and I hope I never have to. But this is why you want to get the things done in the first place, where if you have a deed of trust and the promissory note that refers to it, now you can foreclose. You can force a foreclosure sale on the property, right? Rather than having to go through litigation, which is time consuming and expensive as heck. Right, Mel?
That's right. And Wes was giving the examples of, okay, the property was already purchased and there's some other things that do. One, escrow is important so that you can order those title reports. Yes, you can order a title report from titleiusa.com. You do not need a title company to do that. But here's my but. Using escrow to facilitate the transfer of funds in accordance with an agreement is a gift for all. Because if you are lending because they need to buy Airbnb furniture or because they need to now, do a little more lipstick or a significant renovation, you can put your funds in escrow and you can transfer them based on performance. So now your agreement is based on performance, and that money sits in there protected and not in the hands of these fools that might just blow it and change their exit strategy or mismanage a budget. And there's a little more accountability on all parties. And there's a third party that is facilitating that accountability. So you don't have to have these hard conversations and be that difficult lender. No. We already agreed to it. It's right here. The attorneys will take care of this. So escrow's a gift to everybody.
It really is. And that's actually a mistake that that happens a lot, where people will need gap funding plus maybe a little extra money on a fix and flip, and people will just lend it all at once. And that's the deal with not myself, but a family member of mine is in right now. Actually, I know a couple of people in that exact same position where they lent all the money at once rather than having proof of performance. You're essentially a hard money lender at that point. You are requiring proof of performance before you give them the next draw. You're lending in draws, and that money can stay in escrow, and you can approve the release of that money, right? I don't do that. I prefer to not do it. For fix and flips, if they need a gap funder, fine. The gap funder is a down payment that goes to the hard money lender. But on top of that, I'm not paying extra. Why are they not getting the full rehab money from the hard money lender? That's my first question, because every single fix and flip I do, and the last one that I did that was a $2 million house that a hard money lender funded almost every single penny of it. They funded 100% of the rehab. So why would I be needing to borrow more money for a rehab? Okay, unexpected things come up. Yes, it's true. But on the front end of the flip, you should know how much you're be allocating for rehab, and you're going to be taking it in draws from the hard money lender anyways, who also requires proof for performance. So why would I be asking for, or why would someone else be asking me for all of that money up front right away? That's a concern. That's a red flag to me, right? These are things I just caught onto from doing this for a long time. And some things that I wouldn't really have caught initially on. And that's why some people get into sticky situations, because they trusted someone and they just did what they thought was the thing to do. And now I know what I was going to say, unless you have something to say on that, Mel.
I do, but let's have you do that and I'll try to remember mine.
Okay. So, no, see, now I just forgot what I was going to say again, Mel. Oh
okay.
My gosh.
But think about it. So what I was going to say is insufficient funds is a red flag to me. If they have insufficient funds for some sort of flip that they've already budgeted for, that's a red flag as far as perhaps management, perhaps the hard money lender already said, no, your budget is way too big, or there's insufficient collateral. Right away, that's a red flag that you should immediately start looking at the numbers very closely and understanding whether or not you want to cross collateralize or just say, no, this is stinky. I don't even want to deal with it. I don't know if you guys can hear my dog snoring.
I can hear it.
Sounds like Donald Duck right now. She's like just blowing it out of her jowls. Anyway, did you remember what you were going to say, Wes?
No, I don't. It'll come back to me in a few minutes or though.
That's okay.
I was just looking. I responded back to Kevin. He said, "What was the website again to be able to pull title report on the property to check liens?" I do it very manually. The old detective me. I want to go in and see everything themselves. But was there a website that you stated, Mel, where you can go do like your own title search?
Yeah, so Title USA, it's like I think $100 or $150. I actually use First American typically, like the title, but I think I had to have like an LO hook me up to get me access to that. So, network with people and get somebody to create an account so that you can pull title yourself as well. If you've got realtors in your network, some unicorn agents, typically they can pull these things. What do you like to use, Wes? The county?
Yeah, I'm a manual. I'm an analog guy. I go straight to the county recorder's office and I am pulling that APN of that property and I'm going to look at everything attached to it. And there's going to be stuff from, potentially decades ago. Great. I'm going to look at it all. That's just me. I like to see every single penny of every single thing because that's what I did in my job. And I know, you find stuff that way. And then you find, other names that are attached on one random document. It's like, what's this random name I just found? And then you start going down that rabbit hole and it's like, oh my gosh, they have some sort of, interest in this property. And so now if I try to buy it, like what's really going to happen? Like did title catch this, et cetera. So I go down rabbit holes. It's a lot of work, but this gets to what I was going to say. I remembered. If you are a new lender, my question to you is, if you lend on a deal and everything goes wrong and you lose all of that money, is that going to be detrimental to your life? How is that going to impact you? If that answer to the detrimental portion is yes, I would consider not being a lender and being a partner to start until you get a lot more confident. Have some sort of control, have less risk. Because if you lend, another story, a gentleman had $30,000. That was his life savings. And he got offered to lend on a fix and flip, all $30,000. And he was going to get a 50% return on the back end. Well, that person ended up being a scammer. And he is out $30,000. And he is devastated. Don't be that person. It's really hard. I was trying to help him go through everything, and we're there's a whole investigation going on, but he's not going to get his money back. So yeah, if you're going to lend a certain amount of money, and if everything goes wrong and you lost it all, really think about how that would impact your life. I know how much money I could lend where I'm going to be really upset if I actually lose it. Right? I have that number in my head, and I've had other deals that have gone. I lost $30,000, same number, ironically, $32,000 on a deal last year. I'm never going to get that $32,000 back. I am so grateful that I am in a fortunate enough position where $32,000 didn't impact my family's life in a negative way. It was a great learning lesson, and it was a cost of doing business, but I should have known better. And had I had a second set of eyes or someone else to help me or done some sort of proper due diligence or even just knew what I was doing, it's just inexperience when it came to this type of deal, I wouldn't have lost that money, right? Which I'd be stoked to have that back right now. So, give me 1 second here. Mel, go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess I'll say, as we keep kind of harping on some of the golden rules, a couple that we've had is one, always have a second set of eyes, right? You need a sanity check. You need some sort of underwriting. Just have a second set of eyes. 2, escrow always. 3, agreement always, some sort of agreement, whether that's an operating agreement, that's marriage. So maybe a JV agreement, but actually spelled out, not just your names and the address filled in, but actual recourse and planning and some sort of thought process into how things can go wrong and how you would handle them as a team, because this is a partnership if things go wrong and sometimes when they go wrong. And so let's see. Second set of eyes, agreement always, security always, some sort of security. Or just acknowledging that you're blindly investing and not protected. Escrow always. There's 4 things. And then Wes's last rule is like, if it disappears, what's your number? So make sure you understand what that number is. And I think I would add that whole goal, understanding what your goal is here, and what kind of exit strategies you really want to put. There's so many ways to make money and lose money in real estate. So if you want to focus on the types of properties that you personally are interested in, if you're using lending just as a stepping stone, as you gain your skills and perhaps time, if you still have a W-2, you're like, I do not have the time for this right now, but I want to in the future. And I'm using my extra time right now and my income to leverage and help other people with their deals. Like, make it help you, make it hit 2 birds with 1 stone and serve your goals in real estate as well, because it's only going to compound over time, whether it's the relationships and the knowledge that you get by lending on those deals.
I love it. Do you want to see if we have some Q&A? There's actually a question on the side. Chris, what are your thoughts about fractional first position instead of going into second position liens? Would this make you a PMP with the JV? Would put you in a strong position?
It depends.
I've never heard the term fractional first position. I don't know what that means.
So I've done, let's ask you for a moment too, but I'll answer this to the way I'm reading it. I've done this for, when I was at TC, there was a group of 3 lenders that lended on a deal. And so they just formed their own agreement, and the 3 of them did that 35K or whatever. So 5K from one person, 10 from another, and whatever. And so I think that's what you mean. Now it's more parties, more decisions. I think it's fine. It just depends on how you want to do it.
Okay. Yeah, Chris started hearing this recently with the group in North Carolina. I haven't heard that term, but yeah, like you just explained, if that's what you're saying, is like you're getting multiple people to come in on one. So what I've done is I have another entity with some other people who are also lenders, and we will go in on some bigger deals together. So our entity is in first position, and then our entity has an operator agreement that breaks down our responsibilities, right? It's a subset. So Chris, did Melissa answer the question on that? Because my thought is, if you're able to go into first position ever, that's a bonus. If you have to take, if you have to foreclose and, you're first in time, first in right, and better chance of getting your money back, especially because you're going to be able to soak up all of whatever equity is actually there, as long as you didn't over leverage on your lend. But because I haven't heard that specific term, I think that's what you're talking about. Okay.
Seems like that's it. Okay, we've got Shaquille with a question. Let's see.
Hey, Mel. Hey, Wes. Thank you for taking my question. Hey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm a sub 2 member since January of this year. I have plenty of good deals that happened to me. Tech Chang is one of my partner, but another member's very pleasant experience. But one unpleasant experience that I'm currently facing is wherein I was a PML, and at the time of lending, I had the promissory note had an amount of 176 as an equity, but I think there was a loan modification done in the process that was not in the promissory note. Then now the loan amount is 215, which is which makes the property no equity. So the guy who borrowed the money he's in default now, and he's okay with giving me the property, but I think I was talking to Kiki and other members. They mentioned that it has to go through what do you call it, short sale. And so I'm looking at my options, what I should be doing now. I might have to actually write an agreement that I'm willing to lose money to the bank, so the bank can lose some money, I can lose some money. But I'm in second position, like you said. Second positions are not granted. So I had like 25 grand on it. So
Okay.
I just wanted to share my thoughts.
Did the loan mod create a new note for the modification, or is it the same? Because I don't know how. I've dealt with this before. There's a new one for me, Mel. Maybe you know more, but
I was even going to
loan
back up and
mod-
say, state your state. That's a famous Gary quote, and it always depends on your state. Like, you have to state the state, first of all.
Yeah, it's Texas.
Texas. Okay.
So,
And
so I think
second,
that there was a loan modification that was going on in the back, but they had closed the deal because it was subject to. The bank didn't know. But then I found out that the guy, there was some arrears that got moved to the loan. Then now the loan amount is pretty much the same as the purchase price now, or more than that actually. So, like I said, the promissory note said 176. Now, the loan amount is 217, and the purchase price might be 210. So,
okay.
and that's before you're losing agent commissions and time on the market and all these other things too, right? Yeah. So I like to highlight this stuff as a moment for everybody to understand. It takes a long time to understand what's going on. And how long have you been dealing with this, Shaquille?
So I lended this money in March of this year. The guy hasn't paid me past 6 months, and he hasn't paid the bank too, because the bank is now asking to foreclose the property because he hasn't paid 6 months as a PML. I haven't got any money. Not only that, the bank hasn't got their money.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a
Gary
great.
asked.
It took him, it's been 6 months, 7 months, and he still doesn't quite understand what to do yet, right? And it takes a very long time to figure out what an answer is, not the answer, because it's never the thing that you actually want. It's always some sort of nasty compromise, a letter that you have to accept that I'm going to lose money or I'm willing to lose money. It takes a long time to untangle this stuff. And that's one of the really ugly realities of it going sour is, I mean, 6 months later, you still don't have an answer. And do you have an attorney?
I don't have an attorney. So I was thinking of hiring an attorney. If I have to write an agreement, then I would get an attorney.
Absolutely.
Possibly collection.
What type of loan is the initial loan on the property?
Oh, the one that I lent? Yeah, it was to fix the property, fix the kitchen, and do upgrades, just to
No.
get the ownership of the property.
What's the first position the institutional lender was? Is it a hard money lender in first
No,
position? Well, if
it's
a
a
loan
bank.
mod, it's got
the bank.
What do you know? What type of underlying mortgage it is? Is it VA, FHA, conventional, etc.?
It was conventional. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so the exit strategy was a fix and flip. Did they do any work on it?
No, it was not a fix and flip. He wanted to renovate and do as a group home, and the group home wasn't successful, as it seems. This is what I know. I have been, trying to follow up every month, but I heard, oh, I'm gonna get money. I'm gonna get money. But finally, he gave up and said, you know what? I don't think I can manage it. If you want to take over the ownership of this property, you can take ownership. But then I found out he hasn't paid the bank. The bank is now trying to foreclose.
And do you know how much the arrears are? Because Melissa had an idea in there of taking over the mortgage sub too. Though now that the lender is involved, they might not be okay with that.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know how much they owe the bank?
I think 50K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you already had 25K
176 plus 50K. Now it's coming close to 215. The property value is 210.
Okay. Is there any other viable exit strategy with this? Like, will it break even or cash flow as a long-term rental if you're able to bring, catch up the actual payments on it that are due to the bank so they don't foreclose?
I could have taken the property, to be honest, even if it wasn't cash flowing. Now the issue is, since he hasn't paid the bank for the past 6 months too, even after the loan modification, the bank is asking to foreclose.
Okay. Have they communicated with you, knowing that you're in second position?
They communicated with that guy who borrowed my money. So we brought in Kiki Shucks. She's also trying her best. Probably we have to do a short sale, even short sale, when we get. So I don't think I'm going to get my money, but I also don't want to sign an agreement saying that I'm going to lose money.
Right.
Being in second position. So I'm a difficult position here.
Yeah. And
Yes.
it's unfortunate to learn.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think I did all. I went to the title. I got the deed of trust. At that time, I was lending. It had an equity, but later he did a loan mod and put that arrears in the back. Now it doesn't have an equity. So.
And this is also a really good example of vetting the person, because clearly they're not capable of executing the exit strategy in which they kind of pitched to you, right? And they're giving up. And I think Pace had a beautiful metaphor of where I say you're not betting. Some people will say bet on the jockey, not the horse, right? And so I'm lending in somebody because they're charismatic and I like them and I know they're a good closer and they're really prolific in this community. Therefore, I trust them, and you can invest in the person. And there's a lot of wrong reasons to invest in a person. You can invest in a deal because the way it was presented, the way the loan to value is, the way the underwriting works out, it made sense. It was perfectly fine. But if it's not the deal and the person, and that they, it's kind of like our promissory note and our deed of trust, the deal and the person are a couple, and it must all make sense, and they need to go together because, on paper, probably you did everything right. But the person was the limiting factor here. And Pace's whole thing about the jockey or the horse. He's like, I'm a good jockey to bet on because I will drag that horse across the finish line. So if that's a shit deal and it goes so south that I'm not riding that horse anymore, at least I'll drag it. But you don't know that about a person unless you're truly vetting them, unless you're truly understanding their education, background, and experience, and what kind of capability they have to perform. And so I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm happy that you've had other successful ones, and at least you can put those, you can get some confidence to know that it's not that you're bad at this. It's that you didn't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question on that. Did you underwrite this as a group home when you lent on it?
Yeah, I have the numbers from him. Yeah, I looked at it. It makes sense. Like it had like $2,000 cash flow, and mine PML was only $300. So if it was going well, I would have easily got paid $300.
How did you learn how to underwrite group homes?
No, I did not learn it. He gave me a very good Excel sheet that had how much it's gonna cost for each bed in a room. So it had like three or four rooms.
Did you verify all the information yourself first? My question is, why didn't it succeed? You said it didn't succeed.
Because
why did it not succeed?
He wasn't able to fulfill all the rooms, and I heard some of the people didn't pay him too, so they defaulted on him.
And just no management experience or strategy on his part. Yeah. And I would say too, when you're the lender, you're doing this to be passive.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that people understand there's a very active element in lending, even though it's pitched as this passive income stream. It is very active. And so back to the underwriting thing, if it's like somebody provided you underwriting, even if it's an excellent sheet, that's the second set of eyes thing, right? And then there's the references. Okay, what's your experience? How many group homes have you actually managed? Can you show me those numbers? I want those P&Ls. I want those addresses. I want proof that you're capable of doing this. And these are the thoughts. It's the deal, it's the person, and then the information, the verification. And so John's got a Hail Mary he's throwing out there in the side. Just, if there's something you can do, you can try. Sometimes it's like the energy and the effort in trying to recover funds is such a non-money making event sometimes that it's like, okay, where can I cut my losses, learn my lessons, take my lickings, and move on, right? So it's really tough.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, both of you. Amazing.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I
Shaquille,
know
you
there's other questions. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, Shaquille, did you say that you work with Tech Chang? I'm so sorry. Okay, go ahead.
No, I have a good relationship with Tech Chang. He's the one who told me to come to the Zoom.
I love him.
Awesome.
I'm
Thanks,
just
Tech.
teasing. I love
Yeah.
Tech. He's one of my best friends. I love him.
Yeah.
I'm just teasing.
I hear you, Wes. I'm gonna call you later.
We'll take this as the last question, guys. Hi, Sunday.
Hi, you can hear me?
We can.
Okay, so I'm all new to this private money lending. I'm a connector basically. Okay, so I have a deal. I'm in California. This deal's in California. It's a property in Carmichael, and they are subdividing the property into 3 lots. There's a house on the property. And so there's a hard money position of $455,000. There's gap funding. So what I'm trying to do is do the gap funding of $150,000. Okay. And what's happening is with the JV agreement, the private money lender wants the personal, not the business, but the personal person to put his name on the JV agreement. Is that normal? So he wants the party A, in addition to the business, to be on the JV agreement personally, even though there's a personal guarantee that's going to be in a separate document. And this is cross-collateralized with 3 other properties. And they were going to be paying out increments, which is on the JV agreement. So I'm just a little, and I'm telling the private money, that's not like, you're going to get
Sunday, go back and explain the deal again, and who wants this name on what? I got lost.
So it's I'm dealing directly with the private money lender. I'm like the middleman. Okay. So this deal came to me. So what the deal is they're going to subdivide this property into 3 lots. There's a property, house on the property. When that gets sold, that's going to close out escrow. Originally, the private money lender wanted to be like open up 4 different escrows and have it, because there's 3 properties that are going to be cross collateralized with this deal. Okay. It's put into the JV agreement that these properties are going to be cross collateralized. Okay. But like
why? Insufficient security?
No, because they're keeping those other 2 lots, and then they're going to build on there. So he's just looking for the gap funding for it so that once the property is sold, and these 3 properties that are cross collateralized, he's going to pay him back the 150 when each of 3 increments of 65,000 when each of these other properties are sold off, because it's going to take a longer time. So the term is for 6 months, and they're going to be building 2 houses on the property when it's divided up.
Sure. So insufficient security because the land itself is not worth the amount that they need to actually. Yep. Okay. All right. Go on.
So the PML wants to have this person, party A, who is a corporation, also personally put him on the JV agreement. And I'm like, well, he's going to give you a personal guarantee. We're going to sign the personal guarantee. He doesn't need to be on the JV, correct?
What's their goal?
Whose goal? The PML?
The person that wants to be personally on the, like, because that's probably not the solution, but understanding what their goal is would help you come up with a better, like, what's their goal of being personally on this agreement?
Well, the corporation that's not how they do it. I've done other deals with these people. The corporation, the PML wants him to put his name on to the JV.
Okay. So in a lending situation, so let me just go back. So as a lender, I want to know who you are. I don't give a shit about your corporation. I want to know who you are, where you live, who your kids' names are, where they go to school. Just kidding. But I want to know everything about you. So maybe this is them just wanting to know, like, hey, I'm not just lending to an LLC, because I would never just lend to an LLC. I'm the bank. I need to know who you are. Your LLC protects you from lawsuits, from people tripping and falling and drowning in your pools. Your LLC ain't protecting you from me. I'm coming after your ass if you owe me money. So maybe that's what he really wants, and is not like communicating that properly?
The loan, there's a loan personal guarantee, which he will be on that. That's
Yeah.
that one. So I'm like, the JV is the JV agreement. We're cross collateralizing the property with 3 other properties. And then you're also going to get a loan personal guarantee signed by the person. And you're going to be on the deed of trust. And it's going to be, so there will be one blanket mortgage on the DOT written for the property, and all 3 collateralized properties are going to be on that DOT. So what?
Yeah, I think the real thing is just back to that question that I asked, like, what's their motivation?
What?
And then, what's their why? Understanding, like, why do they want to be on it? And then if the answer is, oh, you've already got that covered with all of these other instruments, then it's a matter of education. But if there's something else, which I couldn't understand what else except for
that's what I said to him. I'm like, well, you have it over here on this side. Why do you need it here? Because that's not how these people do business. I've done multiple deals with these guys. That's not.
I hate that answer though, because that sounds like a fishy. I hate that answer. Oh, other people
don't ever say that again. Don't ever say that again, Sunday. Remove that term from
That's
your
the worst
vocab.
response. That's like, hey, let me understand what I don't understand.
Okay.
And that's not to pick on you. That's just like, that is such a red flag.
Hey, I'm new at this. I'm ready to learn. Like,
Totally.
Okay. I'm taking notes. Okay.
Yes.
So,
other people that make me do that. Ooh, I don't like that. That makes me go, wow, I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole.
But yeah, it's really just trying to understand exactly what is the PML's objection to having the corporation on the JV, since that's the actual LLC that's on the joint ventureship. They already know the person's name. They already know who they are because they're going to personally guarantee it underneath that. As long as the entity isn't personally guaranteeing it and the person is personally guaranteeing it, that's what matters. So if that's what's happening, then I would see why they'd want the name, because you need to have the names of the real people. The bank, LLCs and banks don't give a shit. Like, I don't care if you have an LLC. I want to know who you are. Again, I know I already said this. I'm going to reiterate that might be what that is, but you need to understand exactly what they're wanting to know or why they want that. Because, it doesn't.
And I know
really
this person.
make a lot of sense.
He had some other deals go sideways, and I think that's part. And this is a new relationship, so that's we've been on a Zoom call with all parties involved. Like, I'm trying to make him feel comfortable as best as possible.
And I would just try to understand too, because like, it might be an education problem. If they've had some deals go south and they're still lending, it sounds like maybe they could go back and figure out what went wrong where. I love that they're still lending, because I don't think a bad lend means that you should just write it off completely. Because I like to joke, the old saying that says try once and never try again. Right. Except that's not the fucking saying. Excuse my French, but it's like, you got to get your reps in, and you hate to take your lickings, but you should learn and not make repeated mistakes. Right.
Absolutely.
And so if he is overcorrecting because of some past experiences, then it's making sure that there's education as well. Like, this is what this instrument does for you. This is what this personal guarantee does for you. This is the, security that you have based on the loan to value ratio and the cross collateralization. So just understanding all of those elements and making sure that you're checking those boxes. But I would also say maybe that's not a lender that should be lending anymore until they can go back and have those lessons learned too. Because right now, if they're asking,
because I'm talking to the person that brought me this deal, and I'm like, listen, this is what's going on. And she's like, okay, so let me ask you this question. Is it normal, or is it ever not? Is it done or never not done where someone personally is putting their name on the JV agreement if it's running through an LLC and like doubling up? Like, it doesn't make sense to me, but maybe I'm missing something.
One, the normal question. I'm always like, it's always custom. It always depends, right? Two, personal name with a personal guarantee makes sense.
Now that's happening. The personal name with the personal guarantee. Yes. Yeah. But he wants the personal name on the JV agreement, even though it's done through the business LLC.
Yeah, that just sounds silly. And what were you going to say, Wes? Sorry.
I was going to say on my JV agreements, I'm I'm signing them with my name as my managing member because I don't have a designated signer. So like my name is going on them too, but
his name is going on there as well as president of his LLC. So
provide him the
that's what he
operating
wants.
agreement to let him know that he's truly the managing member, because that's a substantiating document that should be provided. But your question of like both in this specific scenario, I won't say usually, and I won't say never, and I won't say always. I'll say in this specific scenario, it sounds like it doesn't need to be on there. So
yeah, it's like an overkill, right?
Totally. It's just
okay. Yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah, Polo.
I wasn't. But yeah, that's.
Hey, I'll throw out there real quick because I know we got to wrap up. If anybody needs a second set of eyes, just on like a very line level of a deal, please reach out. Mel, please tell them what you can offer on top of that.
Yeah. So I do offer due diligence services. If you have a deal that is you have already decided you want to lend on it. I like to say, before you ever talk to me, you need to make sure you like this person, you like this deal, you've underwritten it or brought it to Bo, because I'm not saying that it's not worth it. It most certainly is. But I am saying it is a financial commitment. And so if you want to hire my services to have me vet the deal, vet the person, verify the information, because I do have access I got my commercial license to be able to pull backgrounds, so I can pull up liens, judgments, bankruptcies. I can look at people's assets. I can verify all of that through LexisNexis and through Clear. These are the databases that have the most information on liens, judgments, and bankruptcies. And so criminal records are also important. You probably don't want to do business with somebody who's so this is for partnerships. This is for deals. I have two services. One is actually vetting the deal, the person, and the information. When you have already decided you have a deal that you like. So you've done the work to say, passes the initial test of, I want to lend on this. Now, I want you to vet it and verify it. And that's where I go through, vet the deal, the person, verify the information, and I produce a report. That is a cost that can be passed on to the borrower and should be passed on to the borrower, because that's your cost of doing business. The second one is a passport. I offer people, hey, you want to say this is your background, education, and experience. One, you can do that yourself. It's called a pitch deck. A lot of people do them, but most people don't do them, first of all. And second of all, you can put anything on a pitch deck. Doesn't make it true. So I verify it. So if you want to show people that you are trustworthy instead of claim that you are trustworthy and hope to convince people of that, you can leverage me. And so those are the two services I provide. And I've got links for both Wes's Linktree, my Linktree equivalent. It's a Flowdesk Linktree. All of our information is on there. Our, YouTube, Facebook, something, and my website's on there. There's a lot of friction right now because I am a growing, changing entity that is partnering with a massive, growing, changing entity. So, please be patient with your site's redirecting to this, and I'm confused on that. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm working on it. So please reach out in one of the 10 ways that we've got there for you. And thanks everyone for coming. Any final?
We know that I want to say we're barely just scratching the surface, just barely talking about this stuff. Not even, there's so much more to this stuff, but don't make that make you afraid of being a lender potentially, right? Just follow some of the basic steps we talked about. And then you kind of go from there. You could dig deeper from there, right? There's a lot to it, but when you get it down, it doesn't become that hard, and you can have a great success with it. I've had a lot of success, and I know a lot of people have had a lot of success, and you hear horror stories, which is going to happen in any business all the time anyways. And we just want to make sure that you protect yourself on the front end so you don't have a horror story to share at a later time. And thanks for coming.
I have one really quick question. You're doing a Zoom on November 22nd, right during the middle of the meetup across country. Are you going to record that? Because I'm in charge of LA over here, and I don't want to miss anything that you say.
I appreciate that. So I'll record it.
Okay,
I'll record it. I have this reoccurring Zoom that is automatically going to record. Now I do have it reoccurring on a weekly basis, and it will not happen on a weekly basis. I'm sorry. So just understand, I will announce it. I'll throw it in the group. I'll throw it in 3 groups. But it we'll make it an event, and I have this as a reoccurring Zoom, so I don't have to set up all the settings every time, because I need to ask people like Gary and other folks to help me, and watch way too many YouTube videos to figure out how to do this crap. So I'm out here asking for an integrator if there is one. So it says it's happening weekly. It is not. And when I do them, I will record them. So thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye, guys.